Y'all may be seated. All right, so the reason I chose those two songs specifically, all right, both of them were talking about God's faithfulness, were they not? And so tonight, the next command in our series on the 10 Commandments, any guesses before we have it up on the screen? Any guesses as to what's the next command? I'm going to exclude the adults. We did thou shalt not kill. What's one of the commands do y'all think? Faithfulness. I'm going to see if y'all can put your brain power together. This is really hard. It's creative thinking, logical problem solving. If anybody had to take a guess, Hannah, take a guess for me. What's the next command? What is the next command? What command are we talking about in light of the fact that we're talking about faithfulness? What command has to do with faithfulness? What command about your interaction with people? Huh? Not be perceptive? Anybody? Take a guess. If I was to ask you, are you faithful to your boyfriend? Now y'all may be thinking, what are the 10 Commandments? What is one of the 10 Commandments talks about faithfulness to somebody? So that would only have been to the girl. If I was a friend. What command commit what? Adultery. Thank y'all. It took a long time to draw that out of you. But yes, tonight's command is thou shalt not commit adultery. Command number 7. So after tonight, we only got 3 left. And man, we're getting close to the end, all right? We've been doing it for a while. But yeah, so that's tonight's command is thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, if I was to ask y'all, what is adultery? Somebody give me like a definition. What is adultery? Caleb. Any form of sexual immorality when you're married to somebody. Yes, that in a nutshell, that is it right there. It's any form of cheating on your spouse. Any form of cheating on your spouse. That's what adultery is. Now, in today's world, let's be honest. Is it common for married people to cheat on each other? It is. Is it common for people that are dating to cheat on each other? Yes, it is. So we live in a culture that doesn't obey this command at all, really. We live in a culture, in fact, we're so far down the rabbit hole of this being normal that it's now joked about. It is now the source of memes to go, oh yeah, I don't want my girlfriend to look at my phone, give me my phone back. And it's like, that's just become a big joke. Like our culture is so used to hiding things from people that we're supposed to love and trust that it's now supposed to be funny. To joke about the fact that nobody trusts each other. So I would say we really, really, really need to understand what God has to say about this issue. Now, for some of my youth, earlier last year, I was going to say this year, it's 2025 now. Does anybody else keep writing down 2024 when you're putting down a date on your schoolwork? I'm definitely doing that, and I'm not even in school, all right? I just keep writing down 2024. Anyway, but that being said, last year we did a series on dating, and we talked a lot about dating and how to do it right, but one of the things that we really focused on, and that's what I want to focus on tonight, is before we really talk about adultery, cheating on your spouse, cheating on somebody you're married to, in order to understand why it's so serious, I think we first need to understand what marriage represents. Now, some of y'all already know this. I've taught you well. My young Padawans, you are close to being a Jedi Master, okay? That was the nerdiest thing you'll ever hear me say. But some of y'all already know this. But I want to go and turn in the Scriptures, and I want to read a place in Ephesians chapter 5 that kind of gives you a picture of what marriage is supposed to be, what it's supposed to represent, and why God loves marriage so much in the first place. So Ephesians chapter 5, the first point being, what does this mean? Asking the question, what does this mean about the command? And then Ephesians chapter 5 on a slide. Brother Charles, you got that? Just that first verse slide there. Ephesians chapter 5. Oh, that's the command. Oh, sorry, go to the second verse slide. My bad. Ephesians chapter 5. You're good. It says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as unto the Lord. It says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their husbands in everything. And look at what it says to the husbands. And husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. So when we're really thinking about marriage, you got one man and one woman. That's God's idea, by the way. Anybody who wants to say anything different, they want to go one man, another man. They want to go one man, two women, one woman, two men. They want to do a half and half. No other arrangement is what God promotes or uses. One man, one woman in marriage, and here's what it represents. That marriage represents God's relationship with you. That's actually what marriage is meant to represent, God's relationship with humanity. And the husband is meant to be an earthly representation of Jesus, and the wife is meant to be an earthly representation of the church. So in the way that Jesus loves you and died for you on the cross, that's the kind of love that men ought to have to their husband. Wives. Whoa, wrong message. That husbands ought to have to their wives. And then it says, wives, submit to your husbands. Now again, our culture, the word submit is a dirty word. We think it means be a slave. That's not what it means. It means to follow. Raise your hand in here if you follow people on Instagram. Okay, raise your hand in here if your coach tells you to do something, you do it. Okay? Raise your hand if your parents tell you to do something and you do it. That's all submission. You're choosing to subject yourself to somebody else's influence, to somebody else's leadership. You listen to what they say, you do what they want you to do. It's not about being a slave. If you truly trust somebody, you want to follow them, right? I am assuming the fact that most of you continue to come back on Wednesday nights, you're choosing to follow me as the pastor, okay? So if I was to say submit to me and like demand it, you'd feel like, well, that's a little weird. But what you're doing by following me and listening to my preaching, that is a form of submission. You're saying, I trust you. You have my best interest at heart. I'm listening to what you have to say. That's the kind of submission that a wife needs to have to her husband. It's a trust that says, hey, God made you to lead. You represent Him. I represent the church. Hey, listen, think about if you're saved and you have a relationship with Jesus, do you tell Jesus what to do? No? Okay? Does Jesus love you? Yes. But He does not obey you. He does not take commands from you. He's in charge. And so in the same way, somebody has to be in charge in a marriage. If both the husband and the wife have the same largeness, then what happens when they disagree? They just butt heads, and it goes nowhere, right? So there has to be a point where somebody has to make a decision and lead. And so God has marriage established to be, husbands are supposed to represent Him. They're supposed to love their wives more than themselves. They're supposed to give of themselves. They're supposed to be good leaders. And wives, you're supposed to trust your husband. You are supposed to show him respect. You're supposed to show him honor. You're to show him dignity and not go against him simply because you don't like what he's saying. That's the kind of picture that marriage is supposed to give. It's supposed to represent our own relationship with God. So now if we start there, are we starting to understand why God hates divorce and cheating? Because if you, let's say, I know most of y'all in here aren't married, but just bear it, probably most of y'all are going to get married one day. Now, if you're a guy, you're a man, you're tough, all right? I want you to imagine when you're married. And I want you to imagine a scenario where you're unfaithful to your wife. I hope you never do it. But if you do that, what are you saying about God when you do that? Does God cheat on you? Is God faithless to you? Does God leave you high and dry and go pursue somebody better? No. Or is God faithful to you? Wives, future wives, women in here who are going to get married. You say, I'm not going to get married, Pastor Tyler. Oh, you probably are. Just maybe not, you don't think you are. I didn't think I was going to be married going into college. Shay can tell you that. That's my wife now. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying, all right? Women who are going to be married one day, imagine a scenario where you cheat on your husband. What does that say about the church? Is the church supposed to just abandon Christ when we think there's something better than Jesus, that we could just drop Jesus and that's how we're supposed to treat Jesus? So you see, adultery makes fun of and mocks our very relationship with God. It treats marriage as something that's not a big deal. Oh yeah, I made vows and I made a promise and I did all that, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. That's what adultery is. And when the Bible says don't commit adultery, obviously it's saying don't cheat on your spouse, but listen, physically cheating is one thing. Let me talk to you about another kind of cheating that a lot of people like to do and act like it's not the same. Emotional cheating. You know what I'm saying? Flirting. Messing around. Having a quote-unquote best friend of the opposite sex that's really the backup plan. Ooh, some of y'all are like, Pastor Tyler, I know somebody like that. I know somebody like that. That's cheating. See, to have somebody in mind is, hey, if this current relationship doesn't work out, then I have this other thing on deck, and I'm flirting with them on the side, and I'm texting them all the time, and I would be really uncomfortable if my husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend were to know how comfortable I am with them. I wouldn't want them to know about that. You're cheating just emotionally. You're not being faithful. You're giving yourself a backup plan. Hey, that counts. It's not physical cheating, but it's still cheating. See, it's not like one day a person wakes up in the middle of their marriage and goes, you know what? Yeah, I think I want to get somebody else's wife pregnant today. I just feel like I want to throw my life away and create mass. Wakes up one day and decides to do that. No. It's after months and months and months of emotionally cheating already. That paves the way to do the physical act. See, both of those things are sinful. Both of those things God would be against. And let me also go on to say this. I would say the Bible would make the point, God would make the point that if marriage is supposed to be between only one man and one woman, then is it cheating to marry more than one woman or more than one man? Is it not? I mean, look, when you look in the Bible, here's the thing, when y'all look through the Bible on your own, and I hope you do, and you read it, you look at the Old Testament, you're going to see a lot of people that are supposed to be good, godly men that married more than one woman. And every single one of them had nothing but problems. Not a single one of them had a great marriage life. And by the way, in the Bible, it tells us what marriage is. In Genesis chapter 2, it gives us a very simple look at it. In Genesis chapter 2, we're going to look at verse 22 to 24. It says, and the rib, this is talking about Adam and Eve, the first two people. It says, and the rib, which the Lord God had taken from the man, because he put Adam to sleep, removes the rib, and it says, he made a woman and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, when he sees the woman that God's made, he says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of a man. And that word woman, the word woe, okay, that part of it means to come from, to come out of. So that's why the word woman exists. That's what it means. It means to come from man. And it says, therefore shall a man, one guy, one man, not men, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. Not wives, wife. And they both shall be one flesh. God designed marriage to be between two people. That's it. So when you look in the Bible and you see, but Tyler, Pastor Tyler, but King Solomon, he had like 1,000 wives. You're telling, can I have 1,000 wives? But Pastor Tyler, King David and these other people, yeah, and then none of them were listening to God when they did that. They did what they wanted to do. Look at their lives. And we're going to talk about King David later. He had some crazy stuff happen as a result of all these different kids from all these different women. Trust me, if he could come back alive right now, he would say, don't ever do it. Now, I'm not expecting anybody in here to try to marry more than one person, but there is a trend where these people consider themselves polyamorous, where they're in a relationship with multiple people at once. First of all, disgusting. If you look at the kind of people that are promoting it, it's like, you're not a good representation of that anyway. But really, marrying multiple people, being in a relationship with multiple people, that's just cheating with extra steps. You can say, my other wives are okay with me marrying more women all you want. No, they're not. Could you just imagine? Oh my goodness, that just it's a terrible idea. God does not, that's not his design for marriage. Not that any of y'all were going to do that, but I'm just making sure. If you come across a TikTok, by the way, TikTok almost got banned. What about that, right? And you come across a TikTok where this person's like, oh yeah, look at me in my open marriage, and I'm like, have like 3 things on the side. You're like, no, that's completely disgusting. That is not at all the way a Christian should approach their relationships. God hates that. Okay, so that's what adultery means. Cheating on your spouse in any form. Physically, emotionally, and more than one person at the same time. Yes, all of that's cheating. Okay, But now we need to ask the question, what did Jesus say about this? Because y'all know Jesus. If y'all have learned anything doing this series, anytime Jesus talks about a 10 commandment, he goes even deeper than the original thing on the surface says. He goes to the heart and says, you may be breaking this command in a way you're not even aware of. So let's look at the first thing Jesus said about adultery. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 and 28, Jesus says this. He says, you have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looks on a woman to lust after her has committed adultery with her already in his heart. Remember last week we talked about murder. Jesus quoted, thou shalt not kill. And then what did he go on to say? But I tell you, if you have hatred in your heart, you've committed murder already. So Jesus is doing the same thing with adultery. Because it's easy to say, okay, Pastor Tyler, I have never cheated on a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm saving myself for marriage. I would never do that. Pastor Tyler, even when I do get married, I would never ever. Okay? Have you ever looked at somebody that you were not married to, and if you're dating somebody, you're not married to them, and fantasize in a way you shouldn't have? That's adultery in your heart. You say, come on, it's got to be different. No, it's not. It's not different, because here's the thing. If the only thing you lack is an opportunity to do it, like, in other words, same thing last week. We kind of talked about, stealing. We said that, hey, if you had the opportunity to rob a bank and nobody would find out, would you do it? If your answer is yes, you're a thief. Right? You cannot be trusted. The only thing keeping you from doing it is the fact that you would get in trouble. Okay, let's apply this to your sexuality real quick. If I was to point out, I don't know, whatever actor or person you think is just so gorgeous and beautiful, they're the best looking thing ever, and I sincerely asked you, if you had an opportunity to sleep with them right now and nobody would know, whether you're dating somebody, whether you're married, they would never find out, would you do it? If honestly, in your own heart, the answer is yes, you've committed adultery in your heart. That's what lust is. So now, and just to really make sure y'all understand the difference between attraction and lust, because I don't want y'all to think that, hey, if I think somebody's attractive, am I lusting? No, let me give a definition of both of those words so y'all can understand the difference between these two things. Attraction is noticing that something looks good. We do this every day. When I go on the highway, not very often anymore because I work from home, but when I do, I like looking at all the different cars. I'm a car guy at heart. I know all these different makes and models. And man, there's some cars that are driving, I'm like, man, that looks good. I am visually attracted to the car. It looks nice. There are times in my life where I'll go be walking down the street and there'll be a person that's attractive. I'll think of mine, that's an attractive person. That's not a sin. It's not a sin for your mind and brain to function the way God intended it to function. It's not a sin to find somebody of the opposite sex attractive. What is a sin, and this is the lust part, here's what lust means. It means a strong desire for a sinful act. In other words, you don't just simply appreciate the beauty of something, you actively want to take it. You actively want to sin with that person. So in other words, if I notice a really nice looking Ferrari that was to pull up in the church parking lot one day, I go, man, that's a nice car. But I think to myself, but I would never steal it. That's not my car. That's somebody else's car. I would never steal it. So then that's fine. But if I was to see a Ferrari and go, man, he's over there in the church bathroom, I have 30 seconds. I can probably go over there and hotwire it right now, and I'm going to take it to a chop shop, and then all of a sudden, wait, no, now I've got a sinful problem. Y'all see the difference? Applying that to people? It's not a sin to notice somebody's attractive and to think they look good. It is a sin to fantasize about doing something sinful with them. You've already committed adultery in your heart. You say, well, what if I was thinking about my boyfriend or my girlfriend? Are you married to them? No. So you don't get a free pass just because you're dating somebody. Last time I checked, what happens if y'all break up and they get married to somebody else someday? That means you've committed adultery with somebody else's wife, with somebody else's husband before they were ever married. They're going to be married one day. Hey, you're going to be married one day. To give yourself an excuse to lust now is not going to cut it. You're not allowed to lust at all until you're married. Then you can do all that you want to do with your husband or your wife. But until then, it's a sin. You're not married yet. It's adultery. It's cheating in the heart to do that. And by the way, let me go a step further. Pornography. Pornography. And I'm not just talking about going to a porn website. I'm talking about what kind of accounts do you follow on social media? What kind of things and videos do you watch when you think nobody else is looking? What kind of things do you like? You say, well, come on, doesn't everybody struggle with that? Doesn't everybody do a little bit? No, I don't. Haven't done it in years because it's a sin, because it's adultery, because it's cheating. I'm not saying it's easy to avoid it in today's world. It's not. As a matter of fact, one of the things, a couple of years ago, I noticed that every time I went to my Explore feed on Instagram, it was just like half the stuff was like half-naked people. And I'm like, I don't follow any accounts like that. What in the world is going on? And I actually found that Instagram pushed out an update that automatically makes your feed, if you're a male, they automatically fill your feed with pornographic content and half-nude women because they believe that that'll get you to stay longer on the app. They're pushing stuff using AI to determine whether or not you're a man or a woman, and pushing that kind of stuff automatically. You have to go into your account settings and turn off recommended content for that to not show up. That's the kind of world we're in, and that's the kind of pressure y'all face every day. It doesn't matter what app you use. Everybody in here at some point, you've been exposed to this stuff. But let me tell you something, and I want y'all to think straight about this. God hates porn. You should too. Because porn is training you to be one of two things. It's either training you to be a cheater, because listen, whoever you marry one day, I promise you, they cannot compare to the endless supply of men and women you can find for free on the internet. It's going to ruin your ability to just simply have eyes only for your spouse if you don't get out of that habit right now. You're either training yourself to be a cheater, number one, or number two, you're training yourself to be cheated on. There's a kind of person out there that, I don't want to even use the term just because I think it's a little crude to say it in church, but there's a kind of person that wants to watch their wife sleep with some other man or wants to watch their husband sleep with somebody else. You know where that desire comes from? From watching pornography. You have bizarre, twisted desires that you would never have in your marriage had you simply avoided that and gotten rid of it as a habit. Guys, we have to go to war against lust in our hearts, on our phones, and we have to get rid of that stuff. Don't give yourself an excuse. Don't act like God doesn't see it, because He does. Jesus said what He said for a reason. He sees it. And listen, He knows what's in your heart. Okay, going on from there, Jesus said something else on the flip side. So Jesus obviously condemns any form of cheating, any form of infidelity to your spouse or your future spouse. But then Jesus also talks about divorce. And He says something really interesting that I want us to read. It's Matthew chapter 19, and we're going to look at verses 5 to 9. And He has some people asking Him, isn't it okay to get a divorce for any reason? Isn't it fine that we just all get divorced? I mean, what if we get bored of our husband? What if we get bored of our wife? Can't we just go and divorce them? I mean, what if we fall out of love, Here's what Jesus said. He said, for this cause, referring back to Genesis, shall a man leave father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So you're saying, hey, remember what I said all the way back in Genesis? That one of two people come together and they're one. That's meant to be permanent. He says, wherefore they are no more two but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. That means let no man tear apart. So Jesus is saying, listen, you want to know my opinion on divorce? I hate it. Because that's not supposed to be what husbands and wives do. They're supposed to stay together just like I stay with my people. I'm loyal to my church. Husbands and wives are supposed to be loyal to each other and never divorce. But look at what He says next. And they said unto Him, they asked Him a question, then why did Moses, y'all remember Moses in the Bible, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? They're saying, hey, in the Old Testament though, Jesus, it's possible that you can get a divorce under the right circumstances. And then Jesus answers it by saying this on the next slide. Go ahead and go to the next one. And He says, He said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, allowed you to put away your wives. But from the beginning, meaning when God created marriage, it was not so. He says, and I say unto you, whosoever shall divorce his wife, unless it be for fornication. That means unfaithfulness. And shall marry another, he commits adultery. And whoever marries her, which is divorced, commits adultery. So Jesus says, okay, not only is it adultery to have lust in your heart, even if you've never done the act, but let me take it a step further. If you divorce your spouse for any reason other than they cheated on you, then if you go and get remarried, that's adultery. And if they go and get remarried, they're committing adultery. Do y'all see how seriously Jesus takes this? God hates adultery and he hates divorce. Now listen, the only circumstance in the Bible that allows for you to get a divorce is if the person you're with cheats on you. But even then, you have to ask yourself the question, would God leave me if I cheated on him? What's the answer? No. So even when there's adultery in a marriage, God wants them to fight for their marriage. God does not want you to give up. Y'all need to understand this because, listen, I'm willing to bet a lot of y'all and a lot of your friends and a lot of the people that you know have divorced parents. I have divorced parents. And listen, I was 8 years old when they got divorced, so I was old enough to understand and feel the pain of that divorce, and it wrecked my world. Some of y'all have felt that pain yourself. And whether it was due to cheating or not, the pain of divorce, man, it just about rips your heart in half. You want to believe the best about mom and dad, but then mom's saying this about dad and dad saying this about mom, and you don't know who to believe. There's no pain like the pain that divorce causes. And let me tell you this, Jesus hates divorce. But let me tell you this, even if you had a parent that wasn't faithful to your mom, to your dad, God will never, ever, ever be unfaithful to you. God's never going to leave you. He's never going to turn his back on you. He's never going to decide I found something better and walk out of your life. Parents may do that. God never will. And if when you go into your own marriage one day, and I hope y'all all get married, I hope y'all all if you're a man, I hope you find a beautiful, godly woman. If you're a woman, I hope you find a handsome, godly man. And when you're married to them, don't look at your parents as the perfect example to follow. Look to Jesus. How does Jesus love me? That's how I need to love my spouse. Look at Jesus' example. Look at what he says about adultery and being faithful. My parents are imperfect, but Jesus is perfect. I have a perfect example to follow. And by the way, let me add this little thought. And this may step on some of y'all's toes. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. I don't know all y'all's dating situations, all right? But a lot of dating that goes on in y'all's generation. And I say y'all, I'm Gen Z too. So like you think, no, you're not, Tyler. You have a bald spot. No, I technically am. I was born in 1998, and Gen Z started in 1997. So I am an elder Gen Z to you, and you will refer to me as such, all right? I am part of, all right? Anyway, that being said, a lot of the dating that happens is basically training for divorce. Because think about this. And I've asked some of y'all this question before, and I said, do you love, I'm not going to call anybody out, but just raise your hands. If you currently have a boyfriend or girlfriend, raise your hand. I have a wife, so I can't raise my hand. If you currently have a boyfriend or girlfriend, raise your hand. Nobody? Caleb's hiding it. Remember, I went through his phone earlier, all right? Okay, let's see, where's Hunter at? No, that was Miss Sue's notes. Never mind, that wasn't your notes. All right, anyway. Now, if I was to ask you the question, do you love that boyfriend? Do you love that girlfriend? And you said yes. Here would be the next question I would ask you. Why do you love them? Now, this is where I've done this experiment with some of y'all before, so y'all already know, but some of y'all have never heard it. But I want you to think about it this way. If you say that you love somebody that you're dating, or you love somebody that you have a crush on, and like, that's my wife, I already figured it out, all right? Why do you love them? In your head, I want you to answer that question. Why do I love them? If your answer is because they're attractive, because they have a great personality, because I like them, because they make me happy, because, and you go on and give all these reasons that have to do with you, what you get. Meaning, so if they didn't make you happy one day, they got into a tragic car accident and are no longer that attractive, if they all of a sudden they get depressed and their personality's gone, all of a sudden those reasons you love them are now reasons to leave. So if you say you love somebody and all you can give me a list of is selfish things, you don't actually love them, you're lusting after them. Because that's how a lot of people date. They don't date based up. See, biblical love means I give myself for their benefit. See, that's what Jesus did on the cross. When Jesus died on the cross for you, listen, I promise Jesus is not going, hey, all right, I'm going to die for Tucker. But it's because he's really good at sports. And because, Tucker, he's got a good style. And that's why. Jesus didn't do that for you, did he? Jesus didn't go to the cross and say, hey, Jacob, oh man, I'm going to die for Jacob because he's going to be an MLB player. He's going to be the first MLB player with an artificial leg, man. He's going to do it. That's why I'm dying for him right there. Jesus did not go to the cross and come up with a list of reasons of why you deserved to be loved. No. He went to the cross not thinking about himself, thinking about you. See, love is not what do I get, it's what do I give. Love is selfless. Lust is selfish. So when you think about the person you have a crush on, you're dating, plan to date, want to marry, whatever it is, and you genuinely think you love them, ask yourself that question, why do I love them? Do I really love them for their sake? Would I really be here for them if they were struggling and couldn't give me the things that I wanted anymore? Because guess what, one day, even if you marry that attractive person, even if they never get in a tragic car accident, listen, they're going to do this thing called aging. You better have a reason beyond their looks to marry them. Because listen, nobody in here, some of y'all, me included, I'm already past my peak. I got the bald spot coming in, all right? I'm already past my peak. I'm aging. I'm getting older, all right? I'm not going to be my attractiveness is declining. But that's not why Shay married me, and that's not why I married her. You've got to have a reason for loving them that doesn't involve what you get. Because Jesus loved you without a reason. He loved you because he chose to, not because you deserved it. Okay, so thinking through all of that, let's get to the last part. We're going to finish up. It's already 8:01. What are the consequences? Let's start with the bad ones. If you choose to go along and say, you know what, Pastor Tyler, yeah, but, I'm not really going to listen to this advice. If I'm married and I find somebody else more attractive and they make me more happy, then I think it's okay to leave and get a divorce and cheat. I don't think it's a big deal. Hopefully none of y'all think that. But let's say you choose to go and do some cheating in life. Let's say you choose to lust in your heart. You don't put a stop to any of this stuff. What are some of the bad consequences? Well, number one, like we talked about earlier, the biggest thing that happens in a scenario you cheat on a spouse is emotional pain and torment. Listen, there is no feeling of betrayal quite like a spouse who their husband, their wife cheats on them. The kind of pain, it's like I would rather be shot with a shotgun by Russia, by a Russian soldier, than ever want to have my wife cheat on me. I've known men and women who have gone through the pain of having their spouse cheat on them, and let me tell you, it is not a pain I ever want to have to experience. I had to experience that pain being the child of a divorce because that's what happened leading up to my parents' divorce all these years ago. And I had to see the pain that it caused my parents. Listen, that kind of pain, that kind of suffering does not go away easily. So that's the first bad consequence you can expect of adultery. But let's go a little bit further. A divided family. Ooh, a divided family. Listen, remember we talked about King David. Now, if you go back and read the story of King David, when he first became king, he was doing great. He had one woman he was married to named Abigail. That was his sweetheart. But then as time went on, he started to walking away from God's ways. In fact, it actually says that one night he's on the roof of his palace while the rest of his men are at war. And by the way, back in this day, kings fought with their men. Unlike today where our presidents sit behind a protected palace, okay? All right? But back in this day, kings were supposed to be out in the field with their men when they were at war. King David was not where he was supposed to be. He was back at his palace. He was on the roof and looking out at night. That was in Jewish culture. They didn't have plumbing and stuff. So it was common in that culture that people would bathe on the rooftop because it was a flat roof. That was the most privacy you could possibly get. King David knows what he's doing. He goes up because he wants to get a view of which women are out there on the rooftop that night. That was his version of pornography back in the day. He sees a woman named Bathsheba and decides, I want her. So he goes and gets her. And she agrees to cheat. Bathsheba was married. In fact, the man that Bathsheba was married to was David's top guy. Think of it like one of David's best friends. Yeah, talk about betrayal. So David and Bathsheba commit adultery. She gets pregnant. In an attempt to cover up the fact that she's pregnant, he tries to get his friend to come back home from war and stay with his wife, hoping they would sleep together, and then it would look like it was her or his child. But he didn't want to do that. He told David, no, I cannot go to be with my wife while my men are at war. See, that's how loyal David's friend was. And by the end of the story, David ends up doing something to get him killed. God knows and sees all of this. God then comes and through a prophet, tells David, because of your sin, you're not only going to lose the child that's in Bathsheba's stomach, but you are going to have a divided household for the rest of your days. So David, the only right option he could take from there is to marry Bathsheba, add her to the family. And listen, when you read the rest of about David's family life from there on out, all these different women, all of these different kids, and how some of these kids went and raped one of these other kids, and then these kids wanted revenge, and so they went and killed this other one, and by the end of David's life, he actually had a real civil war happen because of his family dynamic. That's the kind of division and harm that can come from adultery. Now, you may say, well, I won't have a literal civil war. Some of y'all have seen something close to it, as close as you can get. Do you want that in your life? And then finally, the last consequence, and this is the harshest one, is the judgment of God. If you live a life of being unfaithful, you engage in adultery, and you cheat, listen, God's going to remove His blessing from your life. And by the way, even if you make a big mistake and you commit adultery, and then later on you say, I'm sorry, the pain of your failure will never completely go away. It'll be like a scar that's healed, but the scar is still there. That's what adultery does to your life. It makes it very difficult for people to trust you. It makes it very difficult for your kids to trust you. Is that the kind of thing you want to live with? Is that the kind of judgment you want to have on your life? Listen, there's people who have done terrible things and have come to Jesus, and Jesus has used their life. Listen, I'm not saying Jesus won't forgive you, but I'm saying there are some scars that even when they're healed, they still are painful. That's what adultery does to your life. But let's look at the good consequences if you choose to not commit adultery. And we're almost finished. I know. Bear with me. Very quickly. Number one, you're going to have a healthy family. A healthy family. Listen, if you simply choose to say, you know what? My wife may be driving me to my last nerve today. She may have done this or that, but you know what? That's my wife. I'm never going to look for somebody else. I'm never going to betray her. And you say the same thing about your husband, and you choose to work out your problem instead of running away when things get hard. You're going to have hey, listen, your life's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be healthy because you're going to learn how to actually grow up. You're going to learn how to actually deal with problems rather than running from them, which doesn't fix the problem at all. Raise your hand if you know about that. Trying to run away from a problem, it don't fix nothing, does it? You're going to learn how to fix your problems. You're going to learn how to be an earthly example of a heavenly relationship. Your kids are going to be happy. They're going to have two parents they can trust in. You're not going to have a civil war. You're not going to have a divided family. You're not going to have nasty relationships with the dad's side or the mom's side. No. Everything's going to be healthy. Not perfect, healthy. People who live in adultery never have a healthy family. Then you're going to have the blessing of God. This is the most important thing. You're going to have the blessing of God. See, if you think about marriage for a second, think about it this way. Before God created like nations and governments, and before God even created church, marriage was the first thing that he established. The first human institution, as we would say, ever created was marriage. Meaning it's the starting point for everything else. You can't have a country unless you have lots of people, and you can't have lots of people unless you have moms and dads getting together and hugging each other in a special way and making little children, and you can't have that unless you have marriage. You know what I'm saying? Marriage is the starting point for everything else. And so if you obey God in your marriage, everything else out from there is also going to be blessed by God. Because all of a sudden, not only is your family healthy, your marriage is family, but now, or your marriage is healthy. I don't know what I was saying there. But now, all of a sudden, the country that you live in is healthy. Because the country has intact families, and we don't have orphans anymore. We don't have the need to have orphanages because all of the kids are with family being raised with parents who are there for them. We don't need foster systems anymore. Y'all see what I'm saying? And then now we have people in government that are making decisions, and they're helping the problem, not hurting it. See, a healthy marriage is the beginning of a healthy life. If your marriage is good, listen, you may get fired from your job, but you're going to be just fine. Why? Because your wife's right there saying, hey, we're going to find another one. But imagine you have a bad marriage because you did some things you shouldn't have done. You've been unfaithful, and now everything else becomes that much worse. Because when I come home, I'm coming back to a mess. Listen, having a healthy marriage, man, you get blessed by God there, but then you get blessed by God in the rest of your life too. And let me finish on this final verse, and we're done. Last verse, hold me to it. Hebrews chapter 13, verses 4 and 5. Here's what it says. Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. Jesus is saying, marriage is a beautiful thing, and sex inside of marriage is awesome. He says, but whoremongers and adulterers, God will judge. God will punish people who do those things. Cheat on their spouses. And he says, let your conversation, and that means your behavior, be without covetousness. Don't desire to have something that's not yours. And it says, and be content. Be happy with such things as ye have. That includes your wife and your husband when you're married. It says, for God has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. And if that's the attitude that God has, that's the attitude that we should have. All right? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into a time of invitation. I'm just going to say a quick prayer, and Charles is going to play some music, and then we'll just have like just 2 minutes. But I want to give you guys the opportunity to come to this altar, and maybe you've realized that I have some lust in my heart, Pastor Tyler, that you called me out tonight. Or maybe I've emotionally cheated. Maybe I've been dating in a way that's not healthy, and Pastor Tyler, I realize that that's not right. You're going to get an opportunity to come to God and pray and confess that sin to Him and ask Him for His help to do it right. But here's the more important thing. More importantly than getting marriage right and getting dating right, you can't get those things right unless your relationship with God is right. And so here's what I want to do. I want everybody to go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes. Nobody looking around, okay? And I'm not going to ask you to do anything beyond raise your hand here in just a moment if this fits you. If you know for sure that you are saved, meaning that you've asked Jesus to forgive you of your sin, you've made the decision to follow Him, it's kind of like remember the day you asked Jesus to forgive you and you decided to become a Christian. And you know for sure that because you are saved and have trusted in Jesus that you are going to go to heaven when you die. Raise your hand. If that's you and you have confidence, you know, I'm a Christian, I've accepted Jesus, and I'm saved. Okay, put your hands down. Now, if you weren't able to put your hands up, I'm going to assume it's because you don't know that for sure. But can I tell you something? You can know for sure tonight. Because listen, Here's what Jesus did. That's the whole reason Jesus died on the cross, was for this right here, so that you could be forgiven of your sin. See, we're all sinners. We all deserve to go to hell. And because of that, listen, the day that we die, if it wasn't for Jesus, that's where we would go. See, but Jesus lived a perfect life because he was God in human form. Lived a perfect life that you could never live, and then next, he went to the cross, and in doing that was actually taking the punishment for sin that you deserved. And then after he dies on the cross, he rises again to prove that he was God, to prove that he had power over death. And now he gives you the choice. Do I want to be forgiven or not? It's like you owe a debt to God that you can't pay. And God gives you one of two options. You can try to pay it yourself, even though you can't, meaning you're going to be eternally stuck. That's why hell is eternal. Because you're trying to pay back a debt to God you can never pay. Or God says, my son can pay it for you. All the sin you've ever committed, all of the punishment you've ever deserved, he will pay for your sin now. All you have to do is to admit that you're a sinner, believe in what he did for you, and ask him to forgive you. And just mean it with your heart. Listen, so I want to offer that tonight. If you've never gotten saved, you can come and talk with me after church. You can come to this altar and in your own words, come to Jesus and get saved. Ask him to forgive you. Listen, all it requires is that you believe in him. So let me say a word of prayer, and we'll have a time of invitation. Dear God, thank you so much for all of your blessings. God, I know that tonight's lesson was a little heavy, but God, this subject is heavy. And so many of us have experienced the pain of those who've cheated, or maybe our parents have been divorced, God, and we know how ugly that can be. So God, I pray that you can help us to be good Christians and not just not cheat with our hands, but God, that we wouldn't even cheat with our hearts. God, that we would have faithfulness, even if we're not married yet, God, but we would have faithfulness to the future spouse we may not even know yet. So God, I pray that you can help us to confess our sin and our failures when we have it. And God, if there's anybody here tonight that is not saved or doesn't know for sure, God, I pray that you could help them to come and become sure. It's like saying a wedding vow to Jesus, a commitment to follow you. God, I pray that they would come and do that tonight, because that's all it takes to have their sin forgiven. I pray for that, Jesus, and in Jesus' name, amen.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You will lead me through the fire, and in darkest night you were close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God, yeah. And all my life you have been faithful. Oh, the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing, I'm gonna sing.
Go ahead and turn it down. All right. I didn't want that song to go on for 20 minutes, okay? But that being said, I hope y'all enjoyed the message tonight. And listen, I hope y'all learned something. There's a few quick things. Number one, both teams, you have all this stuff to use to decorate, paint, design your flags. Come and take it. Now, I have a question for the Flames. You have the Flames flag right there. Where's the Serpents flag? Where? Is it here in the service? Okay, good, because y'all would have lost 200 points if Shay forgot it. Okay, so Shay is going to have to find somebody on the Serpents to give the flag to, because she's